Hello everyone, and welcome to the most laid-off backtracking podcast in the world, House of Games. Today I'm joined by my yet-to-be-fired host, Otto! And two more soldiers are trooping in from the right, Mr. Karrar and Ali. But before we get into today's discussion, let's open that door of this week's episode of House of Games.
Welcome to this week's episode of House of Games. And now, finally, for the first time in, I think, 4 weeks, we finally have a guest. So I'm really happy to introduce our guest, Ali and Karrar. And I think, without further ado, I will let you introduce yourself. So, Ali, do you want to start to tell us who are you and what do you do?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say I'm very honored to be here. Thank you guys for inviting us. I am Ali. I'm the 3D modeler and animator in a game that we worked for 5 years right now. It's called Conquest, and we'd like to talk about it today.
Perfect. And Karrar, go right ahead.
It's my honor to be invited here today. I am Karrar. I am an indie game developer, and I'm also working on Conquest as a lead developer, lead programmer, and yeah.
Great. And I think just as a first introduction for, I guess most of our listeners do not know anything about this game. So could you just give us the helicopter view of the game? What is it like? What was the core idea that inspired you to make this game? And what is like the vision for it once you do release it?
Well, personally, I'm like a huge fan of the Battlefield franchise. My favorite game, actually, of all time is Battlefield 4. Like, I started playing this game in 2014, and since then, like, I played it for all these years, and it was my dream to actually understand how this game works and actually, like, work on something like it. And so, the story starts from, like, looking toward, like, the new installments of Battlefield franchise. Like starting from Battlefield 1, and especially like I personally like didn't like Battlefield 1, and so I waited for the next one, and Battlefield 5 came, and I also didn't like it. So I asked myself, like, can I actually like do something like that? And from there, I looked up online, like found Unity, and from there. I started learning, but actually, like, I didn't take it seriously in the beginning. I was just like curious. I never thought I could do it. Like, it's a huge project like that. Not a single person can do something like that. But I found a game called Ravenfield, and this is a single player game that is like Battlefield. It's a very simple cartoonish game. It includes like the same gameplay of Battlefield, and it's made by a single person, but it's single player. And that gave us the motivation to actually think that a project like this is feasible, like it's possible. And I just jumped right into experimenting and prototyping and starting to like do parts of the game. And yeah.
Did you have any experience before this? Because like you said, I mean, it sounds like the naivest thing someone could possibly do. Like, I'm gonna make my own Battlefield game.
Yes.
Like, even someone who doesn't know game development should know that that's like a hell of a thing to do. Like, the first game I made was just a small game, and I thought, well,
yes,
I think I could pull that off. But it turned out it was like 3 years of work, and that was also from scratch. So I'm curious, like, did you have IT skills before you set out on this quest?
Actually, I personally learned or was interested in learning programming when I was like 13 years old. When I started working on the game, I was like 20. So I already know how to program, and also I like made a project in 2016. Like, we started the game on late 2018, like before we actually started college. We actually I knew that we can't make a game like that. So the first thing that I just wanted to familiarize myself with finishing a complete game. So there was a game, like an old game that I played when I was young. It's called Crash Bash, and there was a game mode in this game, like Pong, but like 4 players instead of 2 players. So I decided to like make a game like that. So I named it like Pong Square. This was like my actual first game. So just to familiarize myself like with the
Nice. And could you just give us what do you do in the game? So I get that Battlefield is the model, but in Battlefield you can do tons of things. So it's everything from vehicle combat to just being on the ground and parachuting and everything. So can you just give us your vision of what you want to have as the gameplay and what you do in it? And then you could also, if you want, tell us about your parts in it. So how have you divided the work, and how's that worked?
And how many people work on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, we are just like when we started, we were like two. Me and Ali. He is like a close friend of mine. So we actually like live in the same neighborhood almost. So we are friends in real life. And actually, I like urged my friend to learn game development just so that
Actually,
we can do-
as Karrar said minutes before, like we were just getting to college, and it was an exciting time. We just getting to college, and we was going out every day. We are talking about like video games and stuff and development. Karrar was just getting like excited about game development at the time. And he was talking with me, what should I do? And for Battlefield, like I was a fan of Battlefield as well. Like I played Battlefield 2 a long time ago, and it was just single player. I just played it single player every day. It was so exciting. Like for me, as I started playing Battlefield, like from Battlefield 2, it was like the only game that make you feel that you are in an actual battlefield, you know. Like every other shooter game doesn't allow you the freedom to do everything. So actually, one time I remember I told Karrar, let's just make a game like Battlefield 2, just a single player. But we never, like, it was never a serious talk. It was just a talk. We were talking a lot about that, and like one day Karrar come to me, and he showed me, as he said, like, this game. It is possible. Look at this game. It is an indie game. It's made, I think, by one person.
It's made by one person.
And it was so exciting. We just decided, that's all. We're going to give it everything. We're going to start making this game. And it was an interesting time. As I said, we're just getting to college, and things were very, like, it was an exciting time. We were busy, really busy, and at the same time, starting to learn, like, one of the hardest things you can learn, which is game development.
Like making a game like this
was
is
amazing.
really difficult.
How, you said you started working on this while in college. Like, how many hours per day do you reckon you managed to put into this project?
Well, first, like for me, I wasn't putting a lot into it because I was getting into dentistry, and it is difficult. It is time consuming. So I was learning about, on average, like 2 hours a day. It wasn't much.
For me, I was like as much time as I could actually. So, like because I'm like I do everything in this game except for 3D modeling and animation, and I don't want to do level design. But for the time being, I'm also like the level designer. I didn't mention something. The vision for this game, like, we are just a huge fans of Battlefield. Like, we just want to make the old formula of the Battlefield franchise. We just want something like that. We just want it back. If you know what I mean.
So just a follow-up question on that. What is the old formula of Battlefield? I've only played like 1 or 2 games of it.
Yeah.
So
which games did you play?
Assuming that you know nothing.
Oh, I see. Like the how there are like classes, assault. There's a sniper, medic. In the latest installment of the Battlefield franchise, especially the latest one, they actually removed classes, which is like a core component of the game. Like, to me personally, I didn't even actually play the game because I can't like play this pay to win, like what do they call them, like heroes characters that are in it, like games because of the change in the business model of these games, like the service, the video game as like a service. This kind of ruined the Battlefield franchise, in my opinion.
I wanted to say we had some guests from Norway a couple of episodes ago. They made a game called Falklands, and that's like supposed to be like Age of Empires, those games back in the day, and it also sort of, you can sort of tell they're inspired by that and kind of looks like that, but more modernized. As a big Battlefield fan myself, I feel like the games have become worse and worse, and they're sort of moving away from the formula that really made the first games awesome, in my opinion. So I'm happy to hear that you guys want to, revive the old type of Battlefield games. And I agree what you said before. It's like the only games where you actually feel like you're on a battlefield. And I sort of like that with the first, the first game at least. That, I mean, it's back in the day, and I think it was only like 30-ish players per map or something. But you could like run around for a while before you actually found someone to shoot. And I feel like they are becoming more and more, I haven't played them, at least the last 3 ones, but I feel like they're becoming a little bit more fast-paced and a little bit more Modern Warfare-ish, or Call of Duty-ish. So
yeah,
exactly. The old ones felt more like real battlefields. So that's interesting to hear. And just by looking at some of the images, I feel, just like I told the guys from Falklands, that you seems to have captured some of that nostalgia for sure. So that's cool.
Yeah, but as we said, like we stopped working on the game actually in 2020 for like various reasons. One of them is my friend who was like very busy with college, and then I started another project, which we'll talk about, I guess, later. So originally the game actually was completely single player, because, as I said, making it multiplayer is like a massive undertaking. So we knew that we tried to do something that is like something that we can do, because as I said, we saw indie developers like the guy who made Ravenfield, and that gave us the push. But then while we are working on it, like I actually implemented artificial intelligence that was able to control like helicopters, to play the game completely. But I just felt like this type of game is like it's not to be played in single player. Like the heart of it is in multiplayer. But I didn't also mention that we actually wanted to release it as a single player, and after that, like we succeed and get some more money, then we can do the multiplayer, because the multiplayer is our like main goal. Then we saw a game called which released like 3 months ago. It's called BattleBit, and this actually kind of discouraged us. But then actually we changed our minds. We said like we should never leave the project. We should come back to it. And this is another proof that it's actually possible to actually not only do a game like that, but in a multiplayer setting. And it's actually even like the BattleBit exceeds Battlefield in things like the player count. There is like 200 players in the same single server, which is not even like in Battlefield.
Yeah, so another factor that made us come back to it, like Karrar just finished his networking solution, which I'm sure you guys will talk about it later, and I just graduated. So like as soon as I graduated, the excitement came back to me, like as hard as it came the first time, and we just want to make it, to start working on it again.
Yeah, I didn't also mention that like we originally we want to like implement the gameplay and just like have a prototype working completely, and then we will hire like or get a level designer to actually help us, because we know that we actually can't complete the game complete by ourselves, like 2 people.
I always ask this when we interview people who make their own games, like, are all the assets your own, or are there assets from the asset store? And if they are you planning to replace them with your original?
All the vehicles are made by Ali, and except for like the soldier, there is just a placeholder soldier, because we actually want to make a good model for the soldiers, and the animations, the first person animations are also placeholders, but we will definitely like replace them.
Okay, cool. And Ali, you were graduating as a dentist, is that what you said?
Yeah, I just graduated.
And so
congratulations.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Would you rather be a game developer or a dentist in the future?
To be honest, I want to be a game developer more than I would like to be a dentist.
A game developing dentist.
Yeah. Like now, when I see my friends, they are talking about opening clinics. They are talking about working with like famous dentists in the city. And when they talk to me, my mind is on game development. It's on another another subject. I just like as I said, as soon as I graduated, like the excitement come back to me.
And I'm curious, you said you're going to make a single player first. Is there a story in the game, or how would that single player version play out?
Actually, the plan was for like the same game mode that you play in multiplayer, but with bots. We actually can't do a story, like how you will need cinematics and all that.
The first vision was like Battlefield 2, like the single player of Battlefield 2. Like when you see it like on the surface, it doesn't look exciting. Like I'm talking about the single player, like it's just NPCs running around replacing the multiplayer players. But when you play it, it's fun. Like you can drive anything you want. You can do anything you want. As I said, it's a battlefield. You feel like you are in a battlefield. So the first plan was like this. And when we make some money, we will plan to make it a multiplayer. But then, like, we decided, no, we're gonna go all in and just created its online game from the beginning.
We like it's true. Like it's a bit messy. That's true, but it's our like first project. It's actually like our like only game, except for like my prototype game that I talked about.
Yeah, and this brings me back to episode we did with my brother. Actually, the episode was about, he argued that story in games are completely unnecessary. But the thing that we discussed during that episode was that there is different types of storytelling. So you have one part that is very explicit, which is like, you have specific characters and you have cutscenes and everything. But then you have more implicit storytelling, which is, for example, the setting. So say, for example, that this game would be set during, for example, the Vietnam War or World War II or something like that. So do you have a setting for this game, a specific time period or a specific war or anything like that?
So we want it like for us, we don't like futuristic games. Like even for Battlefield 5, like it's not very futuristic, but we don't like it. We like in the present time. So every vehicle you see, all the settings would be in the modern time. But we decided like, we already made like most of the 3D models for the military equipments. But then we decided like, first we decided to put Russian army on one side. Then we thought about like, instead of Russia, all the flags, all the theme of the military would be like the Soviet army, but in the present time, like the Soviet army would be come back or something. And we put some hints in it in the level design, like we make a level design in Chernobyl. So like the Soviet army is progress to these places, and the fight would be a Soviet army against the NATO army. I think it would be like a good combination. Yeah.
Yeah, NATO. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Have there been a game where NATO is the one of the bad guys or good guys, however you look at it?
I'm not sure that has happened in like a first person.
There's no one on my mind.
I always think about that. Like, it would be quite wacky to just take a peaceful country, well, Sweden up until we join NATO, I suppose, but like Switzerland or something. It would be quite random. Like they just have this fucking army, and they, for some reason, they need to go to war from a story perspective. But yeah, I don't know.
So another thing that I'm curious about, you say that you base, if I understood you correctly, that you base a lot of the like equipment and vehicles and stuff on actual models.
Yeah.
So my first question about that is, one, is there any copyright on, for example, a specific model of a gun or vehicle and stuff? And is there any issues with like just copying that and using it in a commercial game that you sell? And second of all, it just remind me of a kind of a funny story. that I think I heard about World of Tanks or one of those games that, there was somebody who actually leaked like actual military secrets because when he said like, oh, well, actually this model of tank isn't accurate. It's actually looks like this. And then he posted like classified schematics of the tank, how it looked and stuff.
I have heard about that. I'm also a very fan of World of Tanks. Like for copyright, I have searched about it a lot, but it's like it's vague. Like if you put the real names of the weapons, I think you might have issues. But if you avoid that and you just like put in when you want to choose the gun, instead of putting the names, just put like a small picture of it, small illustration.
Yeah.
The dimensions of the weapon, like try to make it a little bit different. Like it look the same, but when you compare it to a blueprint, it looks a little bit different. So I heard that it's not a really big problem, and the weapon companies don't really go after game developers for making the models. Like, I don't know. As I searched a lot about it, it seemed like okay, but we have to dig more into it.
I'm curious about the way you made it 3D models. Here on the website, I see a helicopter and some limousine-ish thing with a gun on the top. Like, how long does it take to make one of them, for example? For example, the helicopter. How many days of work is that to make?
For the helicopter, actually, the helicopter is the only model which I have actually made. I'm not a 3D artist, but I decided to actually learn 3D modeling, and because I love helicopters, my favorite thing in Battlefield is actually the scout helicopter. So I made it a goal to actually model it myself. So I actually made the first version, and then Ali actually polished it further. I didn't talk about the time, which is what the question was. It's actually like I was like when I want to actually do something, I just it's like my everything for the time being. So I like for an entire week, it was what the only thing I was doing actually. So for an entire week, I was just like doing like 5 hours per day on it, I think.
So, like for the vehicles you see on the website, like only the helicopter we will use from that. All the other vehicles, like it's not final. We will not use it in the game. Like all
these are actually all my models. Yes, those are the models on the website are mine.
All the models I created, we haven't posted it.
Yeah.
Like we want to complete all the tanks, all the helicopters, and we will post it.
The only vehicle which, it's actually the infantry fighting vehicle in the video. This is actually made by Ali. But the rest are just like prototyping and learning for me. Yeah. Except the helicopter.
So as for your question, when I started making those models, it was taking a long time. Because I was nitpicking and I was taking a lot of time in really small details. But then I started to look at it. Look, I just have to complete this model. You have to think about a deadline. So for some models, like when I created a tank, it was based on the T90 MS. I took about 60 hours. Like it was a lot. Yeah, and when I created the Humvee, it took me about the same 60 hours or something, because it has interior, it has the gun has to rotate, and it shouldn't interfere with anything, because like you have to think about a lot of stuff, because have moving part, and the soldier will be sitting in this moving part, and he has not to collide with anything inside. So it took a lot of time. But now, if I want to make those models, I would create them in half the time.
There was a funny story. Like when Ali was making the models, he was like sending the first version to me, and I just noticed some issues like with the shading and like some issues on the model. And like I told him to fix them. But actually, we decided to like go and look at the commercial games like Battlefield. And actually, when we started to look deeply into them, we actually found out that there are like dozens of mistakes of this kind already on these commercial games. Yeah.
There are a little mistake that actually we found out no one noticed. So we become more I would have more fun today when I make those models, because I don't have to think deeply about not creating little mistake, and I'm having more fun today.
Like we are talking about the type of mistake that you actually can't notice unless like you are looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
So for our listeners, if they do want to look at these issues with big commercial games, what should they look for?
Like for instance, in Battlefield 4, like there's the tower in the map, goal mode railway. There's like a back face issue. Like the model, when you look at it, you don't really see the face of some of the parts of the tower. You only see like the back face,
yeah,
not
like
the
for
front face.
flip
Yes.
normals and shading issues sometimes. Like even in unwrapping, like if you look deeply, you can find some unwrapping issues in some places, but it's really minor. And but when you are working on a model and you are working inside the 3D software, you like those little mistakes seem big for you, but like it shouldn't take that.
The funny thing is that we look at these AAA games
like
as like being perfect. Some in terms of the style, some of games like they are very well done. Like I know there are bugs and all that, but when you look at the design of the world, you feel like it's very well done. But actually, when you look a little bit deeper, you find out that it's actually also has bugs.
Yeah. So two quick questions. So first, which software are you using to model all of these vehicles and everything? And second of all, would you ever consider, for example, say that Smith & Wesson comes to you and say, hey, could you make this actual gun in our game and we'll pay you this amount of money to feature it in the game with the actual name and link to our website or whatever it is? Would you ever consider that?
So for the 3D software, I use only Blender to make the 3D models, and also for the animation. For the second question, I didn't hear you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so if a gun manufacturer, an actual gun manufacturer, say Colt or Smith & Wesson or Lockheed Martin or whoever, if they come to you and say, hey, we like your game and we would like to have our actual weapons in the game as a sponsored content, so then we will pay you to, I don't know what the deal would be, either we pay you this amount of money or we will like publish your game or whatever it might be if you make sure to have this and this and this in the game and sort of sponsor it so that everyone knows that this is a Smith & Wesson or whatever it might be.
Well, if I look at it on the surface, I think if the gun is it's on the, like, it's not really too futuristic looking, it's on the same style as our game, I don't think we have an issue about that.
Actually, like the way I look at it is that I would accept immediately, like innocently. But I feel like people know, like there are some people that are like very sensitive to things like this, so that if someone like works with these companies, like they look at them as being evil or something. So I think some people may have some issues with that.
Yeah, well, that's the case with everything, but also like the kind of person who would play your game maybe wouldn't care about that. Like maybe they don't have.
Actually, but some people like loud minority may cause some issues.
See. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think if you want to, we could just transition to your other kind of big project which is how I found you actually. So you're actually making, correct me if I'm mistaken, but a network engine for game development. Yes. So, and the way I found it was that, as I understand it, it's made for Unity at first, but now you have ported it also to Godot or have started to. So could you tell me about that project, how that grew out to its own thing, and maybe the journey of that project? So
that project started from like when we decided to actually like make our game multiplayer after as we said. So I looked at the existing networking systems or solutions or middleware that was available at the time, and I'm talking like 2020. And at the time, actually, there was like two main options. The first is Mirror, and the other is Photon Bolt. Mirror is actually geared towards casual games, simple games. Like To be honest, like I'm not don't want to like talk bad things about it. Like it's the most popular networking solution for Unity, but to actually make a secure game, it's a little bit hard using Mirror. So the other option here is Photon Bolt, which is a product from a networking middleware company that's popular, and it's actually not completely free. It is CCU based, so the pricing model. Personally, I just feel like it's not indie friendly. So, based on all these facts, I decided to make my own networking solution, and that was like my dream. Like I was always huge fan of netcode or networking. So when I was playing Battlefield, actually in 2015 and 2016, Battlefield 4 was, as many people know, was extremely buggy, and the netcode was like there was a lot of issues with it. And for some reason, I was so curious how it worked, like how these issues, why they happen, why the hit registration is not working. Like for some reason, I like became extremely interested in netcode and networking. And there was a YouTuber at the time who was like making videos all about netcode, and he was like a huge inspiration to me. His name is his channel is called Battle Nonsense. As the name implies, it is the about the nonsense that happens in Battlefield. So I was like a huge fan of his videos, and I like had some understanding from a gameplay perspective or on how netcode works. Like, so when I got like the a reason, when I got like an excuse to actually like in everything in my life, I actually need an excuse to do something. Like I want a reason to do something. I can't just like make a networking solution. I just feel like it's kind of useless. So like I have to have a purpose. So the purpose here is that I need it for my game. And as I said, like the options are not fitting. So I have like decided to actually get right into it. So yeah, I started researching and stuff. And from that, the story of Netick started. It was like an internal solution for our game. It was like completely internal. So I worked for like a year researching, developing, etc. And I was like almost finished for our game, like for our game. But then because of the circumstances that happened, that as I said, Ali was too busy with the college. I just diverged. So we stopped working on the game, and I just like my main thing started to became Netic. So what I mean is that I decided to make it an actual public-facing solution, and actually I found out that it was like completely different. Not exactly like what I thought. Like to make something like it works, completely works for me for our game, and we are satisfied with it and everything. But to actually make it usable and intuitive and easy to use for other people, that's like a completely different task. So I would say like I spent a year making Netic, and I spent another year actually just making it a product. Like it's that much work you have to put to make it actual a product. Yeah.
Is it something people can download now and use in their games, or is it like in a alpha state or something like that?
No. Actually, I released Netick for Unity in late 2020. Actually, in all this like time, there came other networking solution which got like too much popularity. So when I first released it, it didn't really like get. Like I couldn't really market it. Like I can't really fund something like that. So I just put it out there, and I already have like five people, like five game projects actually in development with it. And after all this time, like after I released it, I after a few months I decided to like make the second iteration of Netic, the second version, because I felt like some things, some stuff needed improvement and stuff. I started working on the on Netic 2, which someone in the community, he always his name is called Vizarian. Shout out to him. He was the reason actually I could release Netic 2 for Godot, because he kept telling me that he wanted to use Netic outside Unity. He just wanted to use it outside Unity, outside any specific game engine. Because of that, I decided like to make it decoupled from the engine, so that it can be used with any engine, but not really any engine. All only engines that actually have a C sharp that have C sharp support. Like almost most popular engines except for Unreal. Sadly, they all have like C# support, like Flux, Stride, Godot, Unity. All the
Yeah.
popular engines actually support C#.
Yeah, and I just have to say, to borrow an expression that often Rune uses, that it's quite ballsy to not only, have as an ambition to replicate something like Battlefield, but then also to say that, you know what, all of these network solutions, they're no good, so I'm just gonna make my own from scratch. So that's really impressive, if not else.
Actually, there is a funny story
You know-
here. I saw somewhere, I'm not sure if I can say this, but I saw like the CEO of Photon, like he was bragging about Photon being like the leader of game networking. So I said, okay, I took it as a challenge. I wanted to like do something that is like even better than them. Yeah. So I had like a motivation, a challenge.
You have no idea how Karrar is passionate about Netick. I'm really proud of him that he just released
Thank you.
the integration for Godot. He's like really passionate about Netick when he started working on it, and every time we meet, he can't stop talk about it. And I have no knowledge in networking, but like when he sees me, he just talk about Netick, what features he want to include. Like he's very passionate about it, and I'm glad that he reached this level with Netick.
Thank you, Al.
Cool, very cool. And it's, to me, it's sort of like, I know some networking, but more from like a user perspective. But I can imagine it. To me, it's really mind-boggling that to even how to do that, or where do you even begin, to do something like that. But could you then tell us, for the people who would like to use something like that, how do you use it? Like, you download some sort of application or script or something, and then how do you integrate that into your game? And, what can you do with it? Is it just for, say that you want multiplayer, or could you also use it for something like cloud saving or something like that, or
High score
what
lists.
is the feature set?
So,
Yeah.
Netick is like the networking runtime, you could say, or the networking engine. It actually is responsible for the everything like synchronization and prediction and interpolation, all this stuff that are like known in the networking. So to actually install it, you actually just like for Unity, you just download the package, and like I made it as simple to use as possible. I know networking is hard, and the funny thing is that people hate networking, and I don't know why. Like something that people dislike. I don't know why. Like even like the networking solutions that are available, there are not even many, because there aren't really many people who bother themselves to actually get into it. Which is, I'm not sure if it's good or sad. For me, it's good because it gave me an excuse to do it.
And on that very note, so I'm curious. I mean, I think this is an interesting question for all of the open source projects that are out there. I mean, to me, it is also sort of mind-boggling that you have all of these great things. I mean, Godot being a great example, or Blender, that they're available, they're amazing products, and they're completely for free. So could you tell us why is this open source or free, or why not have it as a paid product instead of having it as something free?
Actually, I first released it as a paid product, but I then decided to actually make it free. But even today, it's actually not open source. I want to make it open source, but there are certain things that actually, some legal stuff, sadly, that I want to deal with first before I do that. I really want to make it open source, but as of now, it's actually free. And there's actually a paid version also, which includes like a few features that are like not needed for most games.
So tell us more. How do you actually use it then?
Yeah.
So as a a helicopter view, what is the step from going to your website to having it run and help you with implementing multiplayer, for example?
Well, after you go to the site, then you go to the Unity Asset Store and you download it, you download the project. Actually, it includes like a sample of complete 2 samples. There is a Bomberman sample and there is a first-person shooter sample. And like the first-person shooter sample is kind of very simple. It's just to show people a simple example of a game so that they get started if they want to actually make a first-person. I didn't want to add like I don't want to add all kinds of features. I just wanted like a base that people could start from and make a first-person shooter. So if you want to make first-person shooter, you could just start from the first-person sample. And the Bomberman sample is a bit more advanced. It shows you how to actually how to instantiate objects on the network, and how to start the level, and a few more things. Like, it's a bit more advanced, but even then, it's not that advanced. So using these samples, looking at the source code, it's documented and all that, you could actually get started.
And what is the architecture of this network engine? So there are a couple of approaches to doing multiplayer, as far as I know. So you have, for example, the classic server-client model, where you have one server that sort of keeps tracks of basically who shoots who and who walks where, and then sends that information to all of the other players so that everyone is in sync with each other. But there is also, for some games, the peer-to-peer model, for example, where there is not a master server, but rather that everyone broadcasts all of their information to everyone else. And so how is this network engine
Netick
built?
is a server authoritative solution. It uses the classic client-server model, but despite being classic, it's actually the most superior to this day. Like, it's since like Quake 3, like, it popularized this model with client-side prediction, and all AAA games actually used it. But sadly, for some reason, like, the indie community really never bothered to implement client-side prediction, which is kind of essential for if you want to like make your game a little like, for some stuff it's impossible to actually cheat, but sadly.
So a quick just follow-up question. So you said the server-side prediction.
No, client-side prediction.
Oh, sorry. Could you just give us a quick overview of what that is for those who don't know?
Client-side prediction, basically, and first I have to explain what is the client-server model. And the client-server model, basically, the client sends inputs to the server, and the server replies by giving the result to these inputs, and the result to this input is the state. So the client says, I want to move my character 1 meter. The server replies with the position moved 1 meter. So in this model, it's like a very simple implementation, but it's not really feasible because of internet latency, because of ping. Because in this simple model, you basically have to wait as much ping just to see your character moving. So this to make this actually work, you have to do something called client-side prediction. So client-side prediction basically means that these inputs, this input that the client sent to the server, instead of actually waiting for the server to send back the state for the result of the input, what the client does actually is execute these inputs locally. In other words, as they say, predict the outcome of these inputs locally. And when the server sends back the result or the state, the client will override the current state with that server state and actually do something that it resimulates all the inputs that are newer from this state, because when the server sends this state, it's in the past, it's old. So in this meantime, the client actually has executed like 5, depending on the ping, the client has executed 5 inputs and has saved them. So if the server sends back the result to like the third input, what we will do, or what client-side prediction does, is remove all those old inputs and apply this new state, and then re-execute or resimulate all these saved inputs up to that point, the local, or let's say the present of the client, the present time of the client. And all this actually happens instantly. Like, this operation just happens. Like, you don't really see this resimulation. It happens instantly.
So I guess this is where so-called freeze lag comes into the picture, like when you have a really bad connection, that you move somewhere with your character and then all of a sudden you just teleport back 5 steps, or you go somewhere else than you intended, and that's the server trying to correct what actually happened.
What happens here is that the inputs are lost, like the client inputs are lost. The server didn't even know what the client wanted. So the server sent back a state without inputs. So the client just goes back. The client already predicted all those inputs, but sadly the server tells it that these inputs, I didn't even execute them. So you have to go back, and the client just goes back.
Nice. And for our listeners who want to implement multiplayer in their game and want to try your network engine out, do you have to have any prerequisite knowledge to use it, or can anyone like learn from it from, for example, the samples or documentation, or do you have to know all like these things about how like server and clients work, or is there anywhere where you should start, assuming that you know nothing about networking and then want to use your product?
To be honest, I would say that if you have never made a game before, then just go make a simple single player game or something. Like start with single player first, just so that you know actually how a game works. Some people just like jump into multiplayer. You can't just jump into multiplayer because it's like there are a lot of things. Like you actually need to know how to actually move something first before you actually move something in multiplayer. Moving something in multiplayer requires a lot of it's quite like a big cognitive load will be on the user.
And I'm also curious about the porting to Godot. So could you, since I think, as you've heard as well, that there's this whole thing with Unity and its pricing changes, so a lot of people are looking at other engines. And here you are with one alternative. So say that you have made your game with multiplayer in Unity. Now you can port your game to Godot, and your plugin will also work, I assume, the same in Godot. So could you tell us how difficult was it to port it to Godot, or was that just something that was easy to fix or something?
Actually, when I wanted to like port Netick into another engine, to be honest, my first this is before what happened with Unity. Actually, my first option was an engine called Flax. Like that was the thing I wanted to port Netick to. But the Flax engine is at this moment it's kind of early, like it has a lot of bugs. So even when I was trying to port Netick into it, it was like kept crashing on me. So I just left it. So because I got some of my users said that they wanted to switch to Godot, that gave me like more reasons. And because Godot is like the most popular engine after Unity and Unreal, so because of the nature of the Netick 2, it's completely separated from the engine. So like the integration for with Godot, I as I said, like when I want to do something, I just put myself into it. So in 2 weeks, I just worked like every day and started to learn Godot, or I call it Godot, and the creator also calls it that. Everyone calls it differently. So I started learning it and stuff, while also trying to port Netick to it. I had some difficulties, but actually I got a lot of like help from the Discord of Godot.
I'm curious, you work on this and the other game, like do you have another job on side, or is this what you do for a living?
Actually, I graduated like a year ago. So in like it's a free year just to see where I can go with Netick. As could I like make it my job? And to be honest, at this current level, it's impossible to do that. I'm just hoping that things will improve in the future, like it gets more popular and stuff. So otherwise, actually, I will have to like find a job. And I'm actually like I'm already like looking for something.
Cool.
About the engine that you're using, so you are using Unity. Do you have any concerns about that engine, or would you ever consider switching, or are you set on Unity for your game?
Well, this is a bit complicated. Like, it's like we actually have bought a lot of assets and tools that are like like we can't really even port them to other engines, and they don't exist in other engines, which we need them to actually make our game. So it's like we don't really have an option. So thankfully, Unity reverted their ridiculous pricing change. It's kind of like the future of Unity has become unknown, to be honest. Like they can't like just change the pricing and the business model or something just like that out of nowhere. Yeah, actually, the like Flax is extremely similar to Unity, and also it kind of like fixes some of the problems in Unity that have like never been fixed. So it's extremely promising. Like it's like one guy working on it, and he's doing an insane job.
I don't think we asked, like how long do you think it is until the final the game is out, Conquest?
Not everything, but a lot. Like our plan is actually to like do 2 maps only or something like that. So we actually not like going like 10 maps or something like this to play games or something.
Yeah, and if I can give you a piece of advice, I would absolutely advise you to start publishing about the game and talking about it as quickly as you can, even though it's not in a finished or playable state. Because something that I've learned a lot on this podcast and you interviewing a lot of indie developers is that unfortunately the harsh truth about making games is that unless you have a marketing guy or something like that, the only person who cares about your game is yourself. So when you do start publishing and have something real, it would be a lot better to have a small following at least that can share your content and spread it around. But then if you start at zero when you are sort of finished, then you will have a lot of things to work up towards.
We want to actually get to something we want to get to a demo level so that we actually start publishing, because we don't want to promise people things like who knows, the game could probably maybe never come out. So actually there's a small community who knows about the game, and to this day they still contact us and tell us where is the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a shameless self-promotions for our listeners, if you're interested in anything related to marketing and things, I think episode 41 with Folklands and episode, the one with Yahya, where's that? Number 26. Both of those we talk a lot about reaching out and, marketing your game as early as possible. Yeah. Because I think it's, as Rune said, it's really impressive what you're doing from the screenshots that I've seen. And I think you are probably on your way to making something fantastic. So I think people also are just interested not only in the just finished product, but also the journey of following it. It's really exciting to see, even funny bugs or something that is, look, we're doing this for the first time and then seeing it improved over time. I think people really like that story, and if we can help anything at all with spreading the game, then I'm really happy for it. But I absolutely advise you, just spread it around and yeah. Alright, I think we're starting to approach 1 hour of recording, so I think before we end the episode, would you just like to plug it all, just give us information on where can our listeners find you, where can they see what the game looks like, and, the network engine, everything you want to promote. If there's anything else, just go right ahead.
Well, there is a main website for Netick, which is netick.net, exactly like that. And from there, you could get into my Discord. And actually, when I want to start publishing on the game, I will do it on my Discord for Netick, the first place. So it's really the only place.
Yeah, perfect. And again, to all of the listeners, we will, as usual, post all of the links that we can find related to this episode in the description. So please go and check it out there, and I will link to our guests. We will link to the games that we talk about and everything else that might be relevant. So please check that out. And I think, as usual, to follow my own advice, I'm gonna just plug ourselves a little bit. That if anyone have any guests that they would like to have us on this show, or if there's anything that you would like us to talk about, or if you want to send a voice message, we have that possibility. So just check the description; everything is there. Comment and let us know. Yeah, Rune, do you have anything else before we end the episode, or anything you want to ask, or anything like that?
No, I'm all good. Remember to hit the subscribe button as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the usual stuff. That.
And thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say to all of our guests, that you are most welcome back if you have any updates or anything you want to plug. This is also a platform to market your stuff, so you're most welcome back, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, I guess that does it for the episode. So again, thank you so much for being our guest. Thank you, Rune, so much for being my amazing co-host as always. And thank you, listener, for listening to us for this entire time. So see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.